All right, hi everybody. My name is Antero Garcia. You are watching SLAM School, that is the Studies of Literacy and Multimedia Assembly that is part of the National Council of Teachers of English. If you want to learn more about SLAM, please go to our website, slam.education, and check out the past videos. We've had a dozen or so resources at this point, all related to writing, teaching, and activism, and we'd love to have your voices and your students' voices amplified. I am so excited to have my guest Holly with us today to talk through the National Day on Writing. Holly, do you want to introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Holly Hassel. I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Marathon County. We're an open access two-year college. I currently serve as the editor of Teaching English in the Two-Year College, and in that role, I'm on the executive committee of the Conference on College Composition and Communication. And so a subgroup of that committee on public engagement has been working really hard on some activities for the National Day on Writing. And so I'm going to talk about the work that we did and how people can.
Awesome. So here's what I know about the National Day of Writing. It's October 20th, which is coming up. And then I can read some more on the website, but maybe in your own words, you could talk about what is the National Day on Writing, who writes, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the intent is that it's an opportunity to really focus on engaging in writing tasks that are meaningful to people, which is not to say that our everyday kinds of literacy, obviously our everyday kinds of literacy are meaningful, and school literacy, the kind of work we do in those academic contexts is important, but it's I think an opportunity to just really focus in on what are those writing tasks that matter, and making a space in our everyday lives for those kind of tasks and those meaningful literacy activities.
Great. And so I think it sounds like, and I actually, sorry, I'm being very facetious. I remember the National Day on Writing, but I'm thinking about it in terms of who gets to write and what kinds of things people write. So from the two-year college perspective, and from my own experiences as a secondary English teacher and now working with pre-service teachers, I can imagine writing playing different kinds of roles. So when you think about this day, right, National Day on Writing, do you think about it in terms of how we center writing in classrooms, or is it beyond classrooms? Like what are we talking about?
I think the National Day on Writing, it sounds, has a lot of different purposes for a lot of different people. The project that I'm going to talk about today is really focused on sort of civic engagement writing. So writing that's meaningful, inside and outside of the classroom. And that's one of the things that I think we like about it as a kind of flexible opportunity and set of materials, is that people can use it for the purposes that matter to them. Awesome.
So yeah, let's jump into it. I think you created a toolkit for people.
Yeah, well, and it was very collaborative. It was, again, the subcommittee of the 4Cs executive committee on, and we've broken out in our group as a professional organization into these sort of different areas of how to make the work and the mission of 4Cs relevant to and engaged with members, but also beyond. And so the group that I worked with, which was Carolyn Calhoun-Dillahunt, who is one of the officers of the organization and who teaches at community college in Washington, Jeff Andalora, who is the chair of the Two-Year College Association, Two-Year College English Association, and then Amy Lewick, who teaches at a four-year school in California. One of the things that stood out to us, and the idea really came from conversations that we were having at the national convention in April. We had some, just a sort of table conversation at a plenary session. People were really, really, excited is probably the wrong word, but animated by and energized by the need to engage in public writing and to engage with their legislators, to engage with policymakers, to engage and find a voice, a way to communicate the importance and the value of literacy education to those folks. And the idea that we came up with, it actually emerged from the idea of people were sort of like, we should do a general strike, just like not teach writing anymore anywhere. And I was like, I understand that impulse, but at the same time, it's like that writing is really powerful, right? And being able to communicate your message to an audience and for a particular purpose is really powerful. And so we, starting from this idea of like, how do we make ourselves heard? Emerged the idea of a write-in, right, which is built on the idea of a sit-in or some other kind of activity in which people are advocating for themselves. And so we created some materials that we thought could really help people identify a purpose or a goal that's meaningful to them, identify an audience, and then reach out to them and have a voice, and making that a space that happens on that day in the classroom, among colleagues, whatever, just a way to get a message across that's important.
Awesome. I love the flip from let's boycott writing to let's do a sit-in that is a write-in, right? Like
let's use it. Yeah.
It's a real 180, but I think around like, similar kinds of energy.
That's right. Yeah. So that's.
So I should say, so folks, if you haven't, when you're watching this video on YouTube, if you look down, there should be links, and one of the links will be to whyiwrite.us, which is also the hashtag whyiwrite, where hopefully folks will be participating and talking about the National Day on Writing. And on there, I think, is the resource, Holly, that you're talking about, how to host a write-in for the National Day on Writing. And so I'm looking through this, and it looks like there's a couple of different things that are on this resource. Could you talk about maybe what you do? So if I'm a new teacher and I'm thinking to myself, the National Day on Writing is less than a week away. This sounds great, but I can't do this now. Are they right? We screwed up, or is there still?
No, no, they're not right. No, in fact, one of the things that we wanted to do with these materials was create that. I love that word, toolkit, right? Like create a set of materials that people could actually take with them into their classroom. And we know that this means people have to make some time in their class for this. So there's that. But what we wanted to do was make it as easy as possible for teachers across all levels to sort of take this set of materials and customize it, adapt it, and then deploy it in their classes. And we tried to make it really flexible so that folks could say, okay, I have 2 days of class that I can work on this for my first year writing class. And my first day is going to be about helping students identify an audience and purpose. And then my second day is going to be about drafting that text and getting it out to an audience. Or for some, secondary school teachers, they can, however much time they have set aside, my daughter's in middle school. I know she has a 90-minute English language arts block. I imagine this could be really easily adapted to identifying, so if I'm thinking about like my own child who is, occasionally upset about the fact that they don't have playground equipment on their middle school, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it would be really easy to say, oh, hey, that matters. That is a thing that matters to a 6th grader. There's an audience, there's a purpose, it's built in, make the time, help students write about something that's really,
awesome.
that matters to them on their day-to-day basis. And so I think that this is adaptable to a wide range of writing of sites.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it does seem, I imagine, and thinking about my own experiences with high school students and with pre-service students and myself, right? So everybody, oftentimes the hardest thing to do with writing is to figure out what it is I'm going to write about, right? Like once I know what I'm going to write, then I can actually do the writing, right? So I appreciate the example of, hey, playground stuff feels important to me, and is also it could be small enough, but also close enough for me to feel like I have experience, right? I can imagine maybe teachers who are watching this might feel like there's these big global issues, and they are all important, and are oftentimes the news headlines on my phone when I wake up are telling me about, all of the terrible things that are happening in the world. But I might feel like I don't have a whole lot of agency or voice in those spaces, right? So I appreciate the way you're pointing to smaller examples. Looking at the goals that are on this resource, I just want to voice another one that's on here, that a goal for the write-in could be to support the NCTE vision, the vision statement, and I guess I'll read it out loud, but it's also linked. The NCTE and its members will actively engage families, community members, administrators, colleagues, and other stakeholders, and contribute to and critique policy at the local, state, and national levels. And the 4C's strategic vision of 4C's will be a clear, trusted public voice for the teaching and learning of writing, composition, rhetoric, and literacy in all higher education contexts. And I just appreciate, I think across all of these, the kind of scope, right? Like it sounds big and sweeping, but I can hear ways that literally everybody is a part of those vision statements, right? Like those seems like a big
Yes.
opportunity for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump to a couple of the other resources on here because we're just going to talk through them. I think they're really helpful. So for the classroom write-in, so we identify an activity, and then you talked about different kinds of genres of maybe who your audience is. Do you have ideas of like maybe what some of the outcomes could be? Is it can I tweet for a write-in? Can I make a sock puppet? Can I write a 5-paragraph essay? Like what counts as writing?
Well, I mean, I think, sure. I think sock puppetry probably doesn't count as writing. It counts as communication, I suppose. Or if you were to script for your sock puppets, then it would be.
There you go.
A series of tweets or a tweet campaign, I could imagine that would be a way if again, I think part of it is about helping, is building on some of those learning outcomes that we know are critical for literacy education, like rhetorical knowledge. And so like, if you're someone who says, what's going to really get my message across is a tweet, is a Twitter campaign. All right, I'm going to identify a series of tweets that I'm going to post, and they're going to go, in these, to these hashtags, and they're going to be tweeted out to these Twitter users. Absolutely, right? It's partly about helping people cultivate that ability to identify who their audience is, what their goal is, and then the best structure or form to meet that. Because, from my experience as a writing teacher, that can be the biggest challenge, right? Like you were saying, it's sort of like, I don't know exactly what I want to say or who to say it to. So I think one of the things we like about this approach is that it's sort of capacious, but it's also, really pinpoints, here's the find a thing that matters to you, and then you can figure out the way that you can achieve that goal. And so, for like, maybe it's like right now, as we were talking about earlier, I'm there's been a sort of announcement in my community about a really massive restructuring of our institution, and so I'm finding all sorts of like writing tasks, right? Like some of that is, talking, trying to distill points and make those to the news media. Some of it is communicating out with my colleagues. Some of it is developing a memo or a plea to the Board of Regents. So I mean, for students, that could be an announcement to classmates about an activity that you want to get started. It could be a memo to the principal about a resource that you don't see in place, or a proposal. It could be a Facebook note. Again, I think it's really about figuring out the purpose and the audience, and then making the day on writing a time and a space to do that work that matters.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate the way you're sharing like a local example is how it ties into this. I don't think I appreciate the example itself, right, as a current situation. I think related to that, I can imagine, right, so you're sharing like there's this current kind of restructuring that's happening, and a lot of maybe uncertainty and emotions from different people related to how that will play out in their lives. And it makes me think that both, one way to think about the write-in is these like very active, I'm addressing an audience and I want to make sure that other people are hearing from me. But the other side, I think, could be, kind of going inside and thinking reflectively about how am I feeling, doing some narrative-based writing, some reflection. I think those play just as an important role in our own growth, and can also be really powerful forms of writing if we think about, the essayists of our time, someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates and the ways, right? Self-reflection plays a role in his words, and I tend to learn from that. So just pointing to, as folks might feel trauma, trepidation, uncertainty, but also hope and joy and, eagerness, those all seem like things to unpack and share in writing. It doesn't have to necessarily be clinical, maybe.
Yeah, or just advocacy work, or for me as a writer, I often go to advocacy, right? Like make a case. But some of my like really brilliant, smart colleagues are going to like very reflective social media posts. They're going to the idea of like, we need to tell our story. We need to reach out and we need to tell people what's happening and describe it and narrate it so that it's got a kind of permanence to it. And also it helps you process and work through and think. And so right, yeah. And I think obviously personally, I'm seeing all the ways that writing is meaningful for us in this situation. But I imagine anyone anywhere is can be writing in these ways to
definitely
circumstances.
I'll point out, I think, because I didn't get to this, the last of the kind of pieces to this toolkit is basically like a really clearly developed lesson plan that from my look through, it looks like it's pretty adaptable across ages and content areas. And so again, just digging through the link below, I would steal it, and I think that's our intent, right? Like
Absolutely.
adapt this as best you can and use it, so that this idea of, is it too late for me to host a write-in in my classroom or with colleagues? It definitely isn't, right? Like here's an easy way to
Absolutely.
do it.
That was absolutely the intent, was the idea that, because we know that teachers are really busy. We know that teachers have a lot of demands on their time. And so the idea was like, here's a set of materials, you use it as a foundation, adapt it. Absolutely, that's the goal.
Awesome.
And we also added the idea of participating with colleagues, because we know that teachers, literacy educators across all different kinds of contexts are, have shared interests and shared values and shared agenda items that they want attention paid to, or things they want done, right? And so that can be one way to just sort of make a space where we say, hey, this is our 2 hours. We're going to work on, writing in the genre that makes sense to get some things done.
I love it. And I will shamelessly plug our last episode of Slam School was on the importance and structuring of writing groups with Ann Whitney. And it seems like a great way to broker those conversations. So do a write-in, and then once everyone's in the room, lock the door, and now you've got a write-in.
That's right. And now we're a writing group. I like it. That's a good question.
As people if you're watching this in the next couple of days, there is an NCTE Twitter chat that is this Sunday, the 15th, October 15th. The Twitter chat is at 8 p.m. Eastern, or whatever other time zone you're in. You can do the conversion. And you would just go to hashtag NCTE chat. I will also link that below. But I would encourage you to jump in there, because the conversation will be on the day on writing, and different opportunities to hear from other people around the country who are involved in this work. Holly, I really appreciate your time, particularly in it sounds like a particularly stressful time in your personal and university life, college life. So thank you so much for your work, sharing this toolkit. I'm excited about people using this in the next week. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation to participate.